Imagine this scenario with me for a moment. You have someone in your life who has been your rock. Through every storm, through every challenge, through every moment when you've needed support, she's been there. She's loved you at your absolute worst. She's supported you when you felt weakest. She's remained steadfastly loyal when everyone else in your life decided to walk away. But one day, and we all have these moments of poor judgment, you take that loyalty for granted. You break her trust. You hurt her deeply. Do you think she stays the same person after that? Let me tell you something that might be difficult to hear. Once you hurt a truly loyal woman, she changes forever. Today I want to dive deep into something that many of us experience, but rarely talk about openly. The psychology behind loyalty, the impact of emotional betrayal, and the irreversible transformation that happens when a deeply committed woman is betrayed. If you've ever been loved by a truly loyal woman, or if you've ever been that person for someone else, this is something you absolutely need to understand. Loyalty is one of those qualities that everyone claims to have, but very few people truly embody. It's not something you can demand from someone. It's not something that automatically exists just because of a relationship label or a promise made. Real loyalty is given consciously and willingly as an act of profound trust. It's an act of deep emotional commitment. And when a woman is truly loyal, not just saying the words but living them, she gives everything. She invests herself completely in the relationship, not just with words but with consistent actions, with patience, with understanding, and with a kind of emotional endurance that, if we're honest, few people can match. But here's where we often make a devastating mistake. Men, in particular, tend to miscalculate something crucial. They assume loyalty is a static quality, something that exists independently of how they treat the person offering it. They take for granted that no matter what they do, no matter how they behave, no matter how many times they dismiss, neglect, or hurt the person who has stood by them, she will continue to stay. And for a time, that assumption might appear correct. A deeply loyal woman will tolerate things that most would immediately walk away from. She'll forgive. She'll understand. She'll rationalize your mistakes. Not because she's weak, this is the critical misunderstanding, but because she's strong enough to see beyond momentary flaws, strong enough to believe in potential, in growth, in the beautiful idea that love is about more than just perfect moments. But here's what you need to understand. Even the strongest loyalty has its limits. And when a loyal woman reaches hers, something fundamental shifts inside her. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's not a dramatic explosion or single defining moment that you can easily point to. It happens slowly, almost imperceptibly, like water gradually wearing down stone, like a flame that once burned brightly but has been denied oxygen for too long. She starts to see, with painful clarity, that her loyalty isn't being reciprocated, that the love she has poured so generously into this relationship isn't being valued, isn't being nurtured, isn't being met with the same level of care and dedication. And the moment she truly internalizes that realization, the moment it moves from her head to her heart, she begins to detach. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of self-preservation. This is what so many fail to understand. Loyalty is not an obligation. It's not a contract signed in blood that forces a person to stay, regardless of how they're treated. Loyalty is a choice that's renewed every single day, reinforced by mutual respect and appreciation. When that respect is broken, when that appreciation fades, the foundation of loyalty crumbles. And once it's gone, it's almost impossible to rebuild. Why? Because a woman who has given her all, who has sacrificed and stood by someone through their darkest moments, doesn't leave casually. She doesn't walk away on a whim. She walks away because she feels she has no choice. Because staying would mean betraying herself. The tragedy of this realization is that by the time she leaves, she is no longer the same person she was when she entered the relationship. She has learned through painful experience that love alone is not enough. That being loyal to someone who doesn't value that loyalty isn't noble. it's self-destructive. And once a woman reaches this level of understanding, she makes a sacred promise to herself. She will never again allow herself to be in a position where her loyalty is unappreciated. For the one who lost her, the realization comes too late. He'll look back and remember the way she used to fight for him, the way she used to believe in him, the way she used to see the best in him, even when he couldn't see it himself. He'll remember the warmth in her voice, the patience in her words, the way she made him feel safe, understood, and valued, even when he did nothing to deserve it. And then he'll realize, with a kind of aching regret that settles deep into his bones, that all of that is gone, not because she wanted to leave, but because he gave her no other choice. That is the ultimate cost of taking a loyal woman for granted. You don't just lose her presence in your life, you lose the version of yourself that she nurtured. You lose the quiet strength she brought into your life. You lose the one person who saw you, not just for who you were, but for who you could have become. There's something profoundly transformative about betrayal, something that reaches into the very core of a person's identity and reshapes the way they see the world. When a loyal woman is hurt, when she is lied to, deceived, or taken for granted, it doesn't just affect her emotions in the moment. It literally alters the architecture of her mind. The psychological impact of betrayal doesn't fade overnight because it disrupts something fundamental: trust. And trust isn't just a social agreement, it's the foundation upon which a person builds their reality. A woman who has been deeply loyal doesn't enter a relationship with cynicism. She doesn't hold back, calculating every move, expecting the worst. She enters with faith, with an almost instinctive belief that love, when real, is something worth investing in. That the people she loves will love her in return. That when she gives her all, it will be valued. That her kindness, her patience, her unwavering support will be met with the same level of commitment. And because she believes in this so fully, she overlooks flaws, she forgives mistakes, she gives second chances, not out of naivety, but out of hope. But what happens when that hope is crushed? What happens when she's made to feel that her loyalty was misplaced? That the love she gave so freely was met with deception, neglect, or indifference? The answer is something most people never consider. She doesn't just lose faith in the person who hurt her, she loses faith in herself. She begins to question everything: her judgment, her worth, her understanding of love itself. She replays conversations in her mind, dissecting moments, trying to understand where she went wrong. Did she miss the signs? Did she ignore the truth because she wanted so desperately to believe in something good? As these questions haunt her, something inside begins to shift. Neurologically speaking, the brain responds to betrayal the same way it responds to physical pain. Emotional wounds activate the same pain centers as physical injury. The difference is that while physical wounds heal in predictable ways, emotional wounds reshape a person's perception indefinitely. A woman who has been betrayed no longer sees love the way she once did. The innocence is gone. The unquestioning faith is replaced by caution. The heart that once opened freely now hesitates, calculating risks where it once only saw possibilities. This change isn't a choice, it's survival. People often wonder why a woman who has been deeply hurt seems different afterward. Why she no longer loves the way she used to. Why she appears distant even when she cares. It's because once trust has been shattered, the brain doesn't allow it to be rebuilt easily. The mind, in an effort to protect itself from future pain, creates barriers. It becomes hyper-aware of inconsistencies, attuned to red flags, more skeptical of words that once felt comforting. The cruel irony of this transformation is that it makes love more difficult. The very thing she once believed in so deeply now feels dangerous, uncertain, something that must be analyzed rather than simply felt. So she becomes more selective. She no longer tolerates the things she once overlooked. She no longer makes excuses for behavior that disrespects her. She no longer believes in the idea that love alone is enough to fix what's broken. Instead, she demands proof of sincerity, proof of consistency, proof that she is valued not just in words, but in action. And if that proof isn't given, she walks away. Not with anger, not with drama, but with the quiet resolve of someone who has learned through pain that self-respect must come before loyalty. For those who have hurt her, the change is unsettling. The woman who once forgave everything now forgives nothing. The woman who once fought for them now refuses to fight at all. They may try to reach her, to remind her of how she once was, but they'll find that she's no longer that person. She has seen too much, felt too much, learned too much. And once she has changed, there is no going back. There comes a point in a woman's life when she realizes that fighting for something that continuously hurts her is no longer a sign of strength, but of self-betrayal. When a loyal woman has been hurt, when she has given everything and received pain in return, she undergoes a transformation driven not by anger, not fueled by vengeance, but by something much deeper, an understanding that her peace is worth more than any relationship built on instability. Early in life, many women are taught that love requires effort, that relationships demand sacrifice, that if you truly care about someone, you don't give up on them. And that's true to a point. But what's rarely taught is that effort must be mutual, that sacrifice must not become self-destruction, that love should never be a justification for tolerating continuous hurt. A woman who is deeply loyal will fight for a relationship far beyond the point where most people would walk away, not because she's desperate, but because she believes in what she's built. She believes that love is worth fighting for, that people can grow, that struggles can be overcome. But there comes a day when she realizes that the only person still fighting is her, that the emotional labor is one-sided, that she's the one constantly explaining, constantly understanding, constantly forgiving, while the other person continues to take without truly giving in return. That's the moment she changes. That's when she understands that peace, true, deep, internal peace cannot exist in a relationship where she's always unsettled, always questioning, always feeling like she's not enough. She begins to see patterns, cycles of hurt, apology, and repetition. The empty promises of change, the words spoken to keep her from leaving but never backed by action. And as she steps back and truly sees the situation for what it is, something inside her hardens, not in bitterness but in clarity. The clarity that no matter how much love she gives, no matter how much patience she offers, she cannot make someone value her the way she deserves. And so she stops fighting, not out of exhaustion, though she is tired, not out of resentment, though she has been wrong, but because she understands, finally, that love should not feel like a battle, that her worth is not measured by how much she can endure, that choosing herself is not selfish, it's necessary. When she walks away, she doesn't slam doors, she doesn't seek revenge, she doesn't waste energy trying to prove her worth to someone who refused to see it. She simply leaves. She chooses quiet over chaos, she chooses solitude over disrespect. She chooses to rebuild the parts of herself that were broken in the process of loving someone who couldn't love her correctly. And here's what many fail to realize. When a woman who was once deeply loyal learns to choose peace over pain, she doesn't go back. She doesn't return to the things that once kept her up at night, questioning her value. She doesn't lower her standards just to keep someone in her life. She doesn't make excuses for the kind of love that drains rather than nourishes. The people who took her for granted may reach for her. They may try to remind her of how things used to be. They may promise change now that they feel the weight of her absence. But they'll find that she's no longer willing to listen. Because she has learned something they never expected her to learn, that her peace is worth more than their presence. And once she has chosen peace, she will never again settle for less. There's a profound and often tragic realization that comes too late for many. You don't understand the true value of someone's presence until they're gone. And when that person is a deeply loyal woman, someone who stood by you through everything, someone who gave you a kind of love that was rare, patient, and unwavering, the loss isn't just felt momentarily. It's something that lingers, something that changes you, something that forces you to confront the consequences of your own actions in a way that's deeply uncomfortable. A woman who loves with loyalty doesn't give up easily. She doesn't leave at the first sign of trouble. She doesn't walk away when things become inconvenient. She stays, she fights, she forgives, sometimes more than she should. And this is where the fatal mistake is made, assuming that because she stays, she will always stay. That because she forgives, she will always forgive. That her patience, her kindness, her commitment are simply part of who she is, rather than a conscious choice she makes every day to believe in you, to believe in the relationship, to believe that things can be better. But what happens when she stops believing? What happens when the weight of broken promises, repeated disappointments, and consistent neglect become too heavy to carry? The answer is simple, but devastating. She leaves. Not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And when she does, the absence of her presence isn't just an empty space. It's an undeniable void, because it's not just her you lose. It's the version of yourself that she nurtured, the potential she saw in you, the encouragement she gave, the way she pushed you to be better, even when you didn't realize it. At first, the loss may not feel real. You may assume she'll come back after all. She always did before. You may believe that if you say the right words, if you make the right promises, if you finally do the things she begged you to do for so long, she'll return. But here's the brutal truth. By the time a deeply loyal woman leaves, she has already given you more chances than you deserved. She has already forgiven you more times than she should have. She has already pleaded for change until she could no longer ignore the fact that it was never going to come. And so she doesn't turn back. She doesn't entertain apologies that come only when her absence is felt. She doesn't believe in grand gestures that should have come long before she was forced to walk away. She doesn't look at the past through the same lens of hope that once made her stay. Instead, she sees it for what it was, a lesson in what happens when someone is taken for granted, a lesson in how love alone is not enough to sustain a relationship, a lesson in the importance of self-respect. For the person who lost her, the realization will come in moments, in the little things, in the way the house feels emptier, in the absence of the texts that once checked in, reminded them to take care of themselves, encouraged them on their worst days, in the way no one else looks at them the way she did, with the belief that they could be more, that they were capable of something greater. And it's then when the silence becomes deafening, when the weight of her absence settles in, that they will truly understand what they have lost. Here's the most painful part. They'll realize too late that they could have prevented it, that all she ever wanted was to feel valued, appreciated, chosen, not just in words but in actions. That the things she asked for were never unreasonable. That if they had simply met her halfway, given her the respect and effort she deserved, she would still be there. But some lessons can only be learned in loss, and the hardest lesson of all is this. Once a loyal woman has been hurt enough to walk away, she is never the same again, and neither are you. So what's the real lesson here? Value the people who are loyal to you before they no longer are. Loyalty is priceless, and once lost, it's rarely if ever regained. I'd love to hear from you now. Have you experienced this transformation? Have you ever lost or been the one to lose someone truly loyal? Share your thoughts and experiences. Let's keep these powerful conversations going.